Guten Tag, WAP. This is Mr. Linegar. Let's make history today as we go over Unit 2, Day 11. And let's get started with our daily punishment. I made a pun about the wind, but it blows. Key terms for today: Twelver Shi'ism, Shah Abbas the Great, Tamerlane, Babar, Akbar the Great, the Divine Faith, also known as the Din-e-Ali, Aurangzeb, and the Taj Mahal, Shah Jahan. We're going to go over the political characteristics of the Safavid and Mughal Empire, the religious characteristics of the Safavid and Mughal Empire, and a generalization for the reason why all three of the gunpowder empires declined. Let's talk about Safavid Empire, Safavid Persia. The Safavids were originally Turkish conquerors of Persia and Mesopotamia. They were founded by Shah Ismail. He claimed the ancient title of Shah, which is like king, and he proclaimed a new religion called Twelver Shia Islam. Twelver Shi'ism was a branch of Shia Islam. They traced the 12 original ancient Shia imams, the 12 first leaders of Shia Islam, the descendants of Muhammad. Shah Ismail claimed to be the 12th or hidden imam. He was a long-lost descendant of Muhammad. Shah Abbas the Great will be a later ruler of the Safavid Persia. He's going to revitalize the Safavid Empire. He'll modernize the military. He'll seek European alliances. He'll permit European merchants and missionaries into his empire, and he will centralize administration. Next up is the Mughal Empire. Tamerlane, who we talked about before, was a direct predecessor to the Mughal Empire. The founder of the Mughal Empire was Babur. He founded the Mughal Empire in India. They were Central Asian Turks. They invaded India in 1523. They destroyed the Sultanate of Delhi in 1526, and they seized Delhi. By 1530, the Mughal Empire embraced almost all of India. The most famous person you should know for the Mughal Empire is Akbar. He was a brilliant and charismatic ruler. He's going to create a centralized, absolute monarch government. He will encourage religious tolerance. Remember, most people there are Hindus, and he is Muslim. He'll get rid of the jizya, so he'll get rid of the religious tax. He's going to employ Hindus in his government. He's going to try to create a new religion that blends Hinduism and Islam. We've talked about this before, like with Sikhism. He creates a new religion called the Din-e-Ali, also known as the Divine Faith, where he tried to blend aspects of Hinduism and Islam. He will also ban sati. Aurangzeb was a ruler later on. He was his grandson. He's going to expand the empire to almost the entire Indian subcontinent. He was a devout Muslim, and he was not tolerant. So he's going to revoke the policies of toleration. He's going to put back the jizya. He'll destroy Hindu temples. When the Europeans arrive, a lot of the Hindus will be bitter at the Mughals, so the Hindus will support the Europeans, like the English. At first, Aurangzeb did not see the Europeans as a threat, so he will allow the Europeans to trade, to establish bases, and from those bases, they will slowly start to take over India. Here's a map of the Mughal state. It has all of India except for the very bottom part. Let's talk about some of the agriculture in all three of these empires. They all will be agricultural based. Major crops: wheat, rice. They'll import things like coffee, tobacco. The peasants tended to be overtaxed, overworked by the nobles. Many were so mistreated that they abandoned their lands. The population growth will be less dramatic than in China and Europe. All these empires will be multinational, multi-religious. The Ottomans and the Mughals were religiously tolerant for the most part, kind of, except under Aurangzeb. The Safavid were religious Puritans, so they were not as tolerant. All these empires did do long-distance trade. The Safavids offered silk, carpets, ceramics to the Europeans. The Mughal Empire was less attractive to foreign or maritime trading. They produced textiles, spices. There was religious diversity in all of these empires. Generally, they were tolerant. The Ottoman Empire, they did the Millet system. They granted religious and civil autonomy. In India, the majority of the population was Hindu under Akbar the Great, they were tolerant. Like I said before, the Safavid were fanatical. They enforced Sharia law, and they were not tolerant. Bad times. All these empires will sponsor cultural patronage. This is called the Golden Age of Islamic art. You're going to see a lot of famous Islamic art and architecture during this time. For example, in the Mughal Empire, they create the Taj Mahal under Shah Jahan. Shah Jahan built the Taj Mahal in honor of his wife who just died after giving birth to like her, it was like 20th kid, like it was somewhere between like 15 and 20th kid. And her wife died in childbirth. I mean, that's what happens when you have like 20 kids. And he built the Taj Mahal in honor of her. It's kind of cute. There's a lot of rumors and myths around the Taj Mahal. Supposedly, after the Taj Mahal was built, it was so beautiful that he killed all of his architects so they could not build anything as beautiful anymore. That probably didn't happen, unfortunately, although it's a pretty cool story. The Taj Mahal blends Islamic art and architecture and Hindi art and architecture. It does syncretism. Let's talk about the deterioration. There will be dynastic decline in all these empires, negligent rulers, factions, harem politics, government corruption. That's going to be a commonality. There'll be increased religious tension between the conservatives who will abandon tolerance. You see this in the Mughal Empire. The Ottoman conservatives will resist innovations like the telescope, printing press, and they'll fall behind in technology. They will still have muskets, but the Europeans will start to get rifles by the 1800s. In the Safavid Empire, the Shiite leaders are going to urge the Shah to persecute the Sunnis and Sufis. Non-Muslims will lose many of their protections. Under India, Aurangzeb is going to provoke deep animosity of the Hindus, and a lot of those Hindus will support the English when they start to take over India. There'll be economic and military problems. The economy will stagnate by the 1700s, 18th century. They're going to fail to develop trade and industry. There'll be a military decline. They are importing European weapons, but they're not making their own. With all this happening, there'll be a rise in piracy, and banditry. There'll be a lot of cultural insularity during this time. Science and technology will often be ignored as it was seen as a Western threat. They'll be very socially conservative. There'll be no real middle class in these Muslim states. There'll be a huge gap between the ruling elite and the peasants and slaves. Resistance to the printing press. There'll be more and more xenophobia as a cultural trait of Islam during this time. And foreign cultural innovations will be seen as a threat to political stability. And they will not be adapted. But that is the gunpowder empires. Two of them will fall by this end of this unit. The Mughals and the Safavids will fall. The Ottomans will last throughout this next unit as well until 1919. But all of them will definitely decline in this time period. That's all I got for you for today, kiddos. Until next time, deuces. Deuces.